die here? Do you want to take a trip? Hey guys, and welcome back to Strange Journeys. I am Tom, your ghost host, and joining me today, since she hadn't been here in a while, Dagny Taggart, one of our ETs. She was out west actually panning for gold. Maybe we'll get her to tell a little bit about that trip here in a second. As we get started, remember we provide these shows first and foremost for you, the watchers, for your entertainment. We are not by any means and do not claim to be scholars or experts in any of the topics that we cover. We're simply enthusiasts and storytellers who have fun with these topics while doing our best to respect individual beliefs. And please remember that we are live and nothing is rehearsed or edited out later. What you see is what you get. And again, the only caveat to that is the service that we use, StreamYard, has just recently allowed us to be able to upload pre-recorded videos. This primarily was a live streaming service, but now they've added that. So we're going back and picking up on some episodes that were already broadcast. We've already done two. We did our Personnel Paranormal, our very first show. That's been rebroadcast. We're calling it Strange Journeys Revisited. And then last weekend, we did Personnel Paranormal 2. And on that first one, if you were watching, Dagny shared her story of seeing the blue orb, the blue ball of light that she felt like was her guardian angel. So, Dagny, update us. Tell us about your trip.
Well, my mom's not in the best of health, so we decided to go to all the places that were on her bucket list.
Good.
And that included the Grand Canyon, Meteor
Nice.
Crater, where Starman, one of her favorite movies, was made. We went
Cool.
to Roswell. We went gold mining. Gold mining's a big place we like to go to. We go a mile down into a canyon, and they leave us there for a week. And
wow,
we mine with some of the equipment the 49ers used for real and stuff.
That's
and
amazing.
We work for a week instead of taking vacation.
well, did you come back with any gold?
We did. I myself got exactly when I weighed it all out, I had 5 pennyweight, which a pennyweight is equal to a British nickel, I believe. I'm not quite sure, but I think that's what but there's a measurement for it, and that's how they measure gold.
Oh, but the big question, what was it worth?
I did the math. It was probably somewhere around 500.
Nice.
Now the price of gold is up. That's good for me.
Yeah.
So a while back, that much wouldn't have been worth that much, but
right. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we were going to do ET Facts this week, and we might be joined by Tim Shepard. He said he had something come up. He was going to do his best to get back for the show. Lewis Powell said he was going to try to make it in, so hopefully they'll be showing up here in a minute. But our ET Facts this week, I was asking, what is your favorite conspiracy theory? So, Dagny, what's your favorite conspiracy theory?
I have always had a real big fascination with the Illuminati. And I've read lots of James Joyce and lots of, Da Vinci Code. And
I was going to say Dan Brown.
all kinds. Yeah, I couldn't think of his name yet. And I just can't help but think that there's some truth behind it. And even if there's not, I find it fascinating to consider that there's someone with all the power.
A group of folks behind the scenes operating and managing everything. Yeah, that is kind of freaky if you stop and think about it. But Yeah, I mean, if you dig into it, God, I've seen, what was that show? Um, oh, the author. Crap! I just thought you just made me think about it.
Dan Brown,
No, not Dan Brown. The other guy.
James
But
Joyce.
no, this guy actually did a TV show on History Channel for a while and got the three investigators, and they would go out and investigate these different things. I think that God, he's a scrawny, bald headed dude with glass. I'm sorry,
You're asking the wrong person. I
oh,
cannot come
okay.
up with names for the life of me.
Well, they did a show for a while, and he's got a bunch of books out there. But anyway, he had the attorney, the reporter, and the lady scientist. I don't remember what her deal was, but they would go around, and I
I
think they
do
talked
remember
about
now. And they were
yeah,
testing articles like with carbon dating and things like
yeah, they
that,
did all kind of stuff.
and looking
They
for the Ark of the Covenant. And
I don't remember if they did the Arctic Covenant, but they did the Masons, and they did the
yeah,
Illuminati, and they did a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, I'm getting us off. But what got you interested in the Illuminati?
reading the Masks of the Illuminati series by James Joyce,
Okay.
and the details he goes into that almost creep you out, like that Jesus was one of them, and all this, and that there's more. It's more like selling your soul to the devil, and then you
Wow.
get all this power, and it was just so extreme that I was like, so people think this exists? I want to know more about this.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild.
That,
Well,
that, that set of books got me going.
and that's a rabbit hole. If you decide to research that, you're going to go way deep.
Like the rabbit
That's a
hole
lot
we're
of,
dealing with today.
yeah, yeah. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole, though. We're just going to look around the edge a little bit. Well, my conspiracy theory is one most have not heard about. If anybody watching ever gone on my tour, you heard me tell this story and then ask, well, is this a conspiracy theory? I personally think it is, and you'll see why here in a second. In 1170, the King of Wales had some problems going on, and had some fighting amongst his sons. And the youngest prince, by the name of Madoc or Madoc, some people pronounce it Maddox, some people pronounce it Madoc. He left and sailed away on a couple of ships. And the story is that he landed in what is now known as the Fort Morgan area, Gulf Shores area of South Alabama in 1170. And he made his way up through central Alabama and supposedly settled eventually in the Kentucky area north of the Paducah area. And if you've ever heard of the Moon-Eyed People, they're supposedly the descendants of Prince Madoc and his Welsh people and family that came with him. Now, the Daughters of the American Revolution recognized this and put a plaque in Fort Morgan in memory of Prince Madoc, a Welsh explorer who landed on the shores of Mobile Bay in 1170 and left behind with the Indians the Welsh language. The Encyclopedia Americana, copyright 1918, and the Webster's Encyclopedia, and says that these ancient Roman coins found in forts in Tennessee, these forts resemble the forts of Wales of the 9th and 10th centuries and of the white Indians of the Tennessee and Missouri rivers. There is a story of one of the founding fathers of this nation who was a priest, was captured by some Indians in central Alabama, and they didn't take well to him being there, so they were going to execute him, and he asked permission if he could pray, and he began to pray in his native Welsh language. When he began the prayer in Welsh, the Indians stopped and began listening to him because that was their high holy language. Where did they learn the Welsh language? Well, it's hard to see because I've not been able to find a clearer picture, but this is actually on the shores of Wales in England. Prince Maddox sailed from here, and lists his name, and landed at Mobile, Alabama with his ships. So this is a plaque in Wales. The Daughters of the American Revolution placed this plaque at the Fort Morgan area, but it was removed by council members, government officials, and it was placed in storage. Now, I've heard since that the Daughters of the American Revolution have since reacquired the plaque, but they're not allowed to replace it.
Did they give a reason?
No reason was given. The plaque was hidden in storage. Now, to me, that reeks of a conspiracy theory. Now, yes, it would be a fun one to actually go down to the archives and research and that kind of thing and find it out. But it's just kind of ironic. To me, it has all the earmarks of a conspiracy theory. Why would they want this removed?
Yeah.
It wasn't hurting anybody. It was just.
And that was 1100s, huh?
1170. And general.
Christopher Columbus gets all the glory?
That's right. That's right. I think it's been proven time and again that Chris Columbus, who didn't even make it to this continent, all right, he only landed in the Caribbean. He never made it past the Caribbean. But, of course, history textbooks claim him that he discovered America. And I have not held that belief in some time.
I took an IQ test when I was younger, and that is actually one of the facts on an IQ test. Isn't that interesting?
Really?
In what year did Columbus discover America?
Oh, my God. Oh, well, that's another rabbit hole we could go down.
Yeah, for real.
But, a lot of scholars say that this was a story that was made up, that Prince Madoc did not come to this country. So, what about the story of the priest praying in Welsh and the Indians understanding him? What about the story of the Moon-Eyed People in northern Kentucky? There's a lot to dig into there. All right. Last show. Raise of hands. Please comment if you saw last show. I would love to hear from you. We had Elizabeth Parker here. We were following up with another ghost hunting show called Did You Hear That? The EMPs for empaths, mediums, and psychics. And Elizabeth Parker did an awesome job. The show turned more into how to discover your gifts if you're one of these gifted people. But I would highly suggest, if you feel like you have any of these leanings, or you have a touch of the fae, as it's called, to check out that show and see what Elizabeth has to say. She recommended some great books. You want to go back and check those out and see what she had to say. It was just an amazing show. She's very learned and knows what she's talking about because she are one. She's a psychic medium. I know personally she's done a lot of paranormal investigations in the area. She does more one-on-one, with folks, and she calls it. She works with ghosts that have people problems. So you really need to go back and check that show. And then last week, our SJ Revisited was Personnel Paranormal 2. 2 weeks before that, Dagny had shared her story. And then last week, we heard from Beth and Christine and Andrea on their stories. So go back and check that out. You'll see it on the YouTube channel under the Revisited playlist. And speaking of YouTube, if you are watching, please remember to like and subscribe.
put that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.
And I just had to go back and add that to the end of our YouTube clip. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Please do that. We're up to about almost 40 subscribers now. We need a lot more. So if you could, please do that. And also, we need help producing the show. This does take a little bit of money out of my pocket to do this. And I enjoy doing it. I do it gladly. But a little help would be much appreciated. I had gone back and was watching, I think it was the Bridgewater Triangle show that I wasn't able to be on, but Tim was on with John and Andrea, and John said, one of these times that he said, you play that video, I'm coming back and I'm going to be dancing with fire sticks.
Yeah. I love it. I can't help it.
Yeah.
I had my ringtone on my phone set for something similar, and I would just let it keep ringing and dance to it.
All right. Well, let's get on into the show. We've picked a unique topic today, and it's one we could easily spend weeks on, but we're not going to do that today. You'll see why in a minute. Today, we're going to look at 3 different murder sprees that on the surface won't look like they have any connections at all. They may or may not be connected. While each of these could merit their own shows, and there is definitely enough mystery and high strangeness to each one, we only want to focus on the basic details and then compare and contrast the killings. A theory was put forth several years ago that these were all committed by the same person. Is that even possible? Could these have all been the same culprit? We don't know. But in the late 1884 in Austin, Texas, they had what O. Henry, in a letter, coined the term the servant girl annihilator, but the papers of the time never used that. They was actually known as the Austin Axe Murderer, an unidentified serial killer who preyed upon the city of Austin, Texas. Between 1884 and early 1885, these series of 8 axe murders were referred to as the servant girl murders. Contemporaries, on December 26, 1885 issue of the New York Times reported that the murders were committed by some cunning madman who is insane on the subject of killing women. The murders represent an early example of a serial killer operating in the United States 3 years before the Jack the Ripper murders in Whitechapel in London. According to author Philip Sugden in The Complete History of Jack the Ripper, there was a conjecture that the Texas killer and Jack the Ripper were one and the same man. When an editor of the Atlanta Constitution promotes this conjecture following the murders of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes in London. Now, the victims of the Austin Axe murders were Molly Smith, December 1884, Eliza Shelley, May of 1885. Irene Cross, May of 1885. And Mary Ramey, 1888 of 1885. Gracie Vance and Orange, Washington, August of 1885. Susan Hancock and Eula Phillips, December of 1885. So this axe murderer spread it out over about a year of killing, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different people. Now, they first thought it was the husbands. Dagny, we lost you. There you back. Okay. All right. They had footprint impressions, and the DA insisted that one of the husbands had put his own foot into ink to make the instruction. But the husband's foot was smaller. But the DA said when he was carrying his wife out that the weight actually made his footprint bigger. Now, that doesn't even make sense. Anyway, he was tried. Jimmy Phillips was tried for the murder of his wife, who was the last victim, and it became national news. But the thing is, he was convicted, but then he was released for lack of evidence. Susan Hancock's husband was tried, but he was acquitted. And they had run out of suspects. But there was something unique. One of the footprints found as evidence that says, one, there was often an axe, but then we learned from the Lizzie Borden and the Villisca house murders that, axes were something just laying. Yeah, it was common. Everybody had an axe, but the axe was always left behind at the scene. But there were bare footprints of the perpetrator, and they were general measurements in size and shape. But there was one thing that one footprint had in common. One of the footprints, the right one, only had 4 toes. Now, if they were so one of their suspects was the 4-toed man. Trying to find somebody with 4 toes.
That's kind of an easy thing to look for, though.
Yeah.
But,
I don't know which toe it was. It doesn't say.
Investigation has gotten a lot more specific nowadays.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing we talked about in the other shows, the 40 Wax and the Villisca axe murders, is that at this day and time in the 1880s, there was no such thing as criminalist or forensic specialist. They just had to deal with what they had. Now, another suspect was a Malay cook from Malaysia who's called himself Maurice, and he was often working aboard the ships. The London Times described him in October of that year as a man who had threatened to kill some Whitechapel prostitutes in London, but had disappeared. It turned out that in 1885, he had been employed at the Pearl House, a small hotel in Austin, Texas. And a letter to the editor of the Statesman drew the newspaper's attention to it, and a reporter checked it out. The information was confirmed, and it was ascertained that the cook had left the premises in January of 1886. So,
suspicious.
Yeah, and they know he was in Austin and left in January 86, and then he's reported as having been in Whitechapel in London, threatening to kill some prostitutes. So who was this Malay cook? Well, they're thinking he was Jack the Ripper. Now, one thing you learn if you look into any Jack the Ripper documentary or article, there are multitudes of suspects.
And theories.
Oh, God, yes. We've been digging into this for a week now, And well, actually, I've been doing it about 2 weeks. There are so many theories. Well, in 1888, Jack the Ripper made his run. Let's see, he was called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron as well. Jack the Ripper gave himself the name Jack the Ripper in a letter that he wrote. And again, there are so many documentaries out there. I've seen them talk about the forensics of that they check the handwriting, they check the language that he used, this kind of thing. But Jack the Ripper typically focused on female prostitutes who worked and lived in the slums of East London. Their throats were cut. Now, I put an advisory on this one for YouTube. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the actual murders, but just in case we actually get into some stuff, we we want to make sure that anybody listening that's got sensitive ears or children might not be around. But their throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to proposals that their killer had some kind of anatomical or surgical knowledge. Rumors that the murders were connected intensified in September and October of 1888, and numerous letters were received by media outlets in Scotland Yard from the individuals reporting that the murderer, and then, like I said, the name originated from a letter written by someone claiming to be the murderer. Now, supposedly in these letters, he had details. Like, remember the BTK killer? I mean, he was writing letters taunting the police all the time. I say all the time, but he did that as well. But they include certain details in there that may not have been released to the press. So that's how they believe.
They knew it was them.
Right.
And I read in one article that the handwriting analysis of some of the letters that they proved were authentic had an American hand style, a definite American hand style.
Well, and the language of it as well.
Yeah.
That the way they wrote the letters and the language that they used in the letters. Some linguistics experts in London believe that it was an American writing the letters. So, well, he killed 5. He had 5 known victims, and they're called the canonical 5. I guess they use the word canonical to say that these are actual proven to be Jack the Ripper murders, because there are supposedly others murders that happened that they feel like might have been Jack the Ripper, but I guess they can't prove it. Let's see. Yeah, a police investigation into a series of 11 brutal murders committed in Whitechapel between 1888 and 1891, where they were unable to connect all the killings conclusively to the murders of 1888. But those 5 victims were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. And their murders between August 31st and November 9th, 1888, are often considered the most likely to be linked. Obviously, the murders were never solved, and the legends surrounding these crimes became a combination of historical research, folklore, and pseudo-history. Now, after Ripper began his tirade in London is when in Austin they began to think, that was from the Austin axe murders, could this be the same man? That Malay cook that left right after the murder stopped, or the murder stopped and he was known to have gone to London. Could the Austin axe murderer be Jack the Ripper? The timeline. I mean, you got 1884 and 85, and then you got and the killing stopped. He had those 8 victims in Austin, and the killing stopped.
That's what I find so suspicious about it is any serial killer, they continue working and they don't stop. And all 3 of these sprees had sudden stops.
Yeah, they ended.
That's not typical.
No, and that's one documentary. I don't remember if it was the one you suggested to me to watch, the Smithsonian, or one of the others. I watched another one. Anyway, they talked about that very thing. Or they said a serial murderer is not going to stop unless he's stopped somehow.
Unless he's caught, yeah.
Yeah, he's caught, stopped, killed. You know, I mean, you see it on a lot of crime TV shows. You know, the murders stop, and then they find out
their obsession can't be stopped.
Right
on their own. So it is strange that these all had stopping points.
Right, and that's why they for the Austin murders, they're looking at that Malay cook. You know, because I mean, this is just looking back at the time. Of course, they had no clue, obviously, but he left in January of 1885, and the last murder there was December 24th of 18. I'm sorry. When did he leave? Yeah, 1886. The last murder in Austin was December 24th, 1885. The cook leaves in 1886. Well, hey, we've got another guest on the show. We're getting a stare. So in looking back, you know, that's why whoever this Malay cook was, he left right soon after the last murder in Austin, and he's reported to have been seen in London making a threat about wanting to kill some of these prostitutes in Whitechapel. So that's purely. Do I hear road noise? Everything just got loud all of a sudden, a loud roaring noise.
Maybe my airplane going by.
Okay. Yeah, it's fading out. That's probably what it was. So the point being that even during the Ripper murders, it seems they were tying it back to Austin. They had heard about the murders in Austin and the mutilations and wondered, could this be the same person? Well, that leads us to our third serial killer, H.H. Holmes. His name actually was Herman Webster Mudgett, Mudgett, and which in going through the research on this, I found out that he has like 10 or 12 different aliases that he uses.
I was going to ask you about that. Why they call him H.H. Holmes?
That was just one of his aliases from what I can see. I mean, he had several of them. Okay. One of the show... I would recommend the show American Ripper from History Channel, though to me they go into it. I mean the man who is actually a descendant, he is a Mudgett, and he's a great grandson of H.H. Holmes. I mean, he'll tell you straight up, I think Ripper and Holmes were the same person, and I think that was the downfall of the show. They didn't go into it with, to me, open-minded enough. But in that sense, they still uncovered a lot of, to me, amazing circumstantial evidence. Nothing conclusive, but they came across some amazing circumstantial evidence. Now, Holmes was active from 1891 to November 1894. So here's the timeline. 1884, 1885, the Austin axe murders. And 1888, Jack the Ripper. Now, we've got 3 to 4 years. And then 3 to 4 years later is H.H. Holmes on the scene, 1891 to 1894, that he was active. You know, was there something connecting these three? I saw a documentary several years ago focused on this very thing, saying that all three were the same man. But honestly, that's what we're looking at today. Could it have been possible for one man to committed all these crimes? Now, I will back up and say, James Maybrick, who is one of the top candidates thought to have been Jack the Ripper, a diary was found of his, and it depends on who you listen to. Some people say the diary was authenticated, and the diary states that James Maybrick confesses in the diary to have been Jack the Ripper. He actually makes a statement, I have the one you know as Jack the Ripper, something to that effect. But then another person will say it was debunked, that they proved that it was fake and it was false. So it just depends on who you listen to. But one article I read says that James Maybrick was in Austin, Texas at the time of the axe murders. Now, in doing more digging, I couldn't verify that. It just came up in an article. So James Maybrick is purported to have been in Austin during the axe killings there. He lived in Liverpool, and the murders happened on Saturday and Sunday. So if he was at work Monday through Friday, he had free time on the weekends to be Jack the Ripper, I guess. He had a side gig going on. I don't know. But
it seems to me
me.
that all three of these murders also, you say that there's a 3 to 5 year time lapse in between. It seems like if it were the same person, they had just the perfect amount of time to get into a new place, learn the area, get settled in, and continue the work.
Yeah. Yep. Give them plenty of time to establish themselves and plan whatever their next murder was going to be. Now, another thing about the American Ripper series is they keep calling H.H. Holmes America's first serial killer. I didn't.
that irritates me too.
Yeah, because just from what we've seen on this show, that's probably, he was more than likely not the first American serial killer, but he was probably the first nationally recognized.
Documented.
True. That, or the first recognized serial killer. Look at this guy. Now, here's the problem I have with H.H. Holmes. He confessed to 27 murders. And then they find out that 5 of those people were still alive.
Like I was saying before, is, oh my God,
H.H.
what
Holmes.
if you were one of those alive? Are you like, oh my God,
right?
He's gonna kill me.
Yeah. I was on his list. Oh, crap. Well, supposedly, I take that back. Not supposedly. H.H. Holmes built what came to be known as the Murder Castle. And you'll see down at the bottom it says Holmes's Castle. And then an artist rendering did this. Supposedly it was full of murder rooms and chutes down to the basement and all this kind of stuff. And that's what's sensationalized about H.H. Holmes, is his murder castle. And he had different ways to kill people. He had gas lines going into somewhere he could put poison gas into the room and kill people. And
he had willing guests coming to it.
Well, the World's Fair was taking place at the same time he had completed his castle, and during the World's Fair, he actually contracted out to get another level built on top so he could build more rooms. But again, this is a rabbit hole that, each of these murders we could dedicate an entire show to, and that's because there's so much weird, strange stuff in each of these, folks. It's if you look into it, do a search for the Austin Axe murders, or the Servant Girl Annihilator, the Servant Girl murders, and you'll find some weird stuff. Austin put up the Moonlight towers after that, supposedly in response to the killers, and there's only a few of those left today. But anyway, again, we could go down rabbit trails. Jack the Ripper. I've watched every documentary I watched this morning getting ready for the show. There was a different suspect they were proving. This is the proof. We have the proof right here. This is Jack the Ripper. They each one of them, and it was different. Yeah. Go to the Jack the Ripper website, and just do a search and you'll find it. But they list all the candidates. They're open about it.
I was rather sold on the Charles Allen Lechmere, but like you said, it's all circumstantial.
Yeah, that one. They made some valid points there because Lechmere was there with the body. The other guy, what's his name? Frank walked up on him as he was kneeling over the body, and Frank kneels down, doesn't see any blood. And then Lechmere runs off to get a constable. Anyway, when the constable walks up on the body, he sees blood. But supposedly Lechmere and Guy Frank that came up right after Lechmere didn't see any blood. Guy Frank says, I didn't see any blood. But just minutes later, when the constable walks up, he sees blood pooling around the body. So the supposition there is that Lechmere had just committed the murder. So, but again, that's all circumstantial. They didn't put a knife in his hand. They didn't put blood on his clothes, which they even explained why there wouldn't be blood on the clothes, because they suffocated. Supposedly, Jack the Ripper suffocated his victims before mutilating them. And if the heart's not pumping, then they make a slice, the blood will just drain out. It won't spurt because the heart's not pumping. There was another one oh God, what was his name? See if it's in here. Did I have it in there? Lipinski or some kind of weird name like that. They had purely circumstantial evidence, but they were laying it down. This guy is the murderer, and they had all the evidence. So that's the thing about this. That's why we're open to conjecture here. Could these all three have been the same? Yeah.
Speaking of conspiracies.
Yeah.
How do we know which source to listen to and which source not to?
Exactly. That's what I was saying about the James Maybrick diary. One documentary says, we've authenticated it. The materials are right for the time. Da, 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 da. This is real. And then another one comes along. No, we've debunked it. And the guy that actually found it said it was a fake, but then he come back later and recanted and said, no, it's not a fake. So who do you believe? So, all right. Holmes was convicted and sentenced to death for only one murder. And see, this is the thing that puzzles me about the H.H. Holmes thing. He confesses to 27 murders. You talk to anybody, and he's America's first serial killer. That's what American Ripper Show was all about. America's first serial killer. But they only convicted him for one murder. Now, granted, did he cover his tracks that well? Who knows? But anyway, that was his accomplice and business partner, Benjamin Peitzel. But the building that he used, the murder castle that we talked about, there's that artist's rendering again, and then an actual photograph that Dagny found for us. This was only a few miles from the World's Fair going on at the time, the 1893 World's Fair. But besides being a serial killer, Holmes was also a con artist and a trigamist. He was married to at least 3 women during this time. And he was the subject of more than 50 lawsuits in Chicago alone. Holmes was executed on May 7, 1896, 9 days before his 35th birthday. And so they brought him to justice for one murder. I guess that's like getting Al Capone on tax evasion.
Yeah.
He did it.
I was also thinking about it, and, if, let's say that H.H. Holmes was all 3 of these men, all of the crimes ceased after he was put to death. And he was the latest of the 3 sections. And during his time, it's almost like he had perfected his art.
Right. Right.
Like, you look at the axe murders and they're sloppier. Then you get to, Whitechapel, and it's almost precision and showing off. And then you get to Chicago, and it's become an entire lifestyle of conning and the actual home. And so it's, I could see how it could be one man.
Well, here's another thing on that show, American Ripper. They even talk about his connections in Texas. That he was building or was working on building another murder castle in Fort Worth, which I know that's some distance from Austin, but they talked about how well traveled he was. So who knows? Here's a floor plan that was printed in the paper at that time, talking about some of the different places in the murder castle. And here's where he was confessing to 27 murders. And like we mentioned earlier, 5 of them were still alive. So connections can be made. Again, the American Ripper show was very good, very well thought out. They did bring some surprising clues. Go back and watch it if you want to. In one of the shows, they took all the descriptions of Jack the Ripper that were printed in the newspaper, that so-and-so witness said he had this, and they took all the descriptions and they compiled those with a police sketch artist, and it was amazing. The sketch looked a lot like H.H. Holmes, but then Lynn made a comment, it could have been just about any man during that time because they had the mustache and the bowler hat. So who knows? But I
also wanted to mention that I'm a fan of the American Horror Story show, and there's a whole season dedicated to H.H. Holmes. And before we did this show, I knew nothing about him. Now, suddenly, that whole season makes sense to me. It's really cool.
Yeah. All right. We're having problems with Facebook. I hadn't mentioned anything about it, but since the beginning, let's see. Facebook has not been going live for some reason. I don't know why, but we are on YouTube and Twitch. So hopefully people can watch us there. We do have some watchers. Thank you, watchers, for being here. But Facebook, I've already seen a couple of comments pop up saying, "Hey, you're not on Facebook." I don't know. But we've been posting the YouTube link, and I had posted in the Strange Friends group just before the show, just to be on the safe side, because Facebook did this to us last time. So I don't know what's going on there. I am going to change it. I can change it from Facebook page, which is Strange Journeys Live Stream Podcast, and I'm going to change it to the group, Strange Friends. So maybe that'll do something different. So hopefully that'll work. And by next show, I'll do that. I thought about it, but then forgot it.
Maybe it's a conspiracy. Maybe they don't like our talk.
There you go. All right. While any evidence connecting these events is purely speculative and highly circumstantial, could there be a supernatural or paranormal connection? Could that be the link between these seemingly disparate killings? Think of the 1998 movie, The Fallen, starring Denzel Washington. Listen to this. Detective John Hobbs, Washington there, is convinced that when killer Edgar Reese is executed, all of his troubles are over. But when people he knows and people on the street start to sing the same tune that Reese sang in the gas chamber, and those same people taunt him. He is told that maybe the cursed fallen angel Azazel, I guess that's how you say that, Azazel or Azazel, is behind it all. Azazel is cursed to roam the earth without a form, and he can switch bodies by any contact, making him hard to track. When Hobbs is forced to kill a man possessed by Azazel, he must clear his name while protecting his family and others from the evil and vengeful demon. What do you think?
I loved that movie, and
you did?
I like that you're making that analogy.
Well, why not? You know what I mean?
I mean, it's obviously something evil that is inside these people in general.
Yep.
Why not a paranormal entity or something jumping from soul to soul? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to play the...
so much that we don't know.
Yes, that's the point. Yeah, we don't know. Could this be demonic possession? Now listen to this that I came up with, and you've heard this before. Well, the devil made me do it. Wasn't that little Flip Wilson show? The devil made me do it. The Graveyard Shift website has this article and pulled out some of these. Listen to this. February 21st, 2016, Uber driver Jason Brian Dalton went on a shooting spree, killing 6 people, claiming that a demon's head on his Uber app was the cause. Now, how many of you remember this one? During the summer of 1976, the son of Sam, David Berkowitz, killed 6 people and wounded 7 others, claiming that a demon named Harvey, possessing a neighbor's dog, had controlled him and forced him to kill. You know, the devil made me do it. What if there was a demon controlling him? You know, what if that it was a demon controlling that Malay cook, the Malay cook we talked about in Austin, killed those 6 people. He gets to London, maybe jumps on somebody else, kills the people as Jack the Ripper, and then leaves him there. There's documentation that a H. Holmes was on a ship from London to the States right after the Ripper killings.
That honestly sounds more conceivable to me than just a typical human doing these things.
Right. Well, and supposedly another thing that came up was Holmes wasn't really a killer before 1890 or 91.
Yeah, what happened during the other time?
Well, he was a con artist, obviously, and when he began to build this murder castle, but he supposedly not killed anybody. That he had stolen corpses and mutilated them and sold their body parts for money. So, you know, supposedly he didn't start killing, and the premise of the American Ripper show was that that's where he got the thirst for it. That you can see in the first Ripper killing how he just sliced her open, and they progressed. You know, he's only taken one body part. In the final one, well, the fourth one, I think he got interrupted, wasn't able to kill. But the final one, they found the body in a room, locked away where nobody could see it, and her body was completely flayed open.
Once he figured out if he was indoors, he could take his time.
Yeah, that was exactly their point. So, could that be demonic? Pazazu Algarad was arrested in 2014 for killing a person and then burying the body in his backyard in July of 2009, as well as helping his girlfriend bury someone she killed later that year. He had taken the name Pazuzu in reference to a demon mentioned in The Exorcist, and he had a forked tongue and sharpened teeth. I guess he was into body modification, you know. But an anonymous man who lived at the home where the bodies were buried told the police that he felt Pazuzu was possessed. And this is his quote: "It was very serpentine, and his eyes would kind of get a little like glazy, like almost not there." like the inner part of him would kind of phase away. You could tell when his demons needed something from him because they took over. About once a month, and it was usually on a full moon, they sacrificed at least one rabbit, and then he would eat the heart of it and then burn the flesh of the rabbit. So, was he possessed? Now, we can say easily and unequivocally, yes, anybody that does this is possessed. But could there have been a specific demon behind the Austin Axe murderers, Jack the Ripper and H.H. Holmes? Who knows? According to Reverend Cecil Begbie, South African Aljar Schwartz was possessed by demons when he strangled a Ravensmead teenager to death before beheading him and leaving his body in an abandoned school in October 2013. Schwartz claimed that he had become possessed by a vague collection of satanic attacks, but he never went into further detail. Allegedly, after beheading his victim, he had intended to sell the man's head to a traditional healer called a Sangoma. Wow. Jason Nelson, a 32-year-old Englishman, claimed to be under the spell of a demon when he went on a spree of violence, raping a woman, attempting to rape her daughter, and then murdering Jordan McGuire after inviting the man into his home to sell marijuana. Just a couple more. And then we'll talk about a different aspect. In 1981, 19-year-old Arnie Cheyenne Johnson stabbed 40-year-old Alan Bono to death after arguing over Johnson's girlfriend. After being picked up by the police, Johnson gave this immortal defense, "The devil made me do it." Rather than balk at his claims, every paranormal investigator worth their salt flocked to Connecticut to interview Johnson and find out if he was truly possessed. According to Ed and Lorraine Warren, you've heard of them, the paranormal investigators who helped make the Amityville case so famous, Johnson had become possessed when he threatened to fight one of the collection of 43 demons who were living inside his 11-year-old brother. So I guess he was trying to save his brother and something got on him. But after the judge denied the demonic possession angle that the defense was trying to play, Johnson's team didn't have a leg to stand on. The killer was eventually convicted of manslaughter, which I don't know why they stopped at manslaughter. Why didn't they go first degree? I mean, it was obvious something was going on. But listen at this. Johnson received the maximum sentence of 10 to 20 years and was released for good behavior after serving just over 4 years at the Connecticut Correctional Institute.
Our amazing justice system.
Yeah. I mean, this guy. Wow. He stabbed her to death anyway. And he only gets 4 years. I mean, he's sentenced to more, but after 4 years, well, it's good behavior. Well, what if the demon had left him?
Maybe
if
they
it really
recognized
was.
it. Yeah.
If it really was, who knows? And then he's no longer a threat to society. That's just the supernatural, paranormal side. Another thing I thought about, have you ever heard of vengeful ghost?
No.
In mythology and folklore, a vengeful ghost or a vengeful spirit is said to be the spirit of a dead person who returns from the afterlife to seek revenge for a cruel, unnatural, or unjust death. In certain cultures where funeral and burial or cremation ceremonies are important, such vengeful spirits may also be considered as unhappy ghosts of individuals who have not been given a proper funeral. In Jewish mythology, you may have heard of this one, a Dybbuk, D-Y-B-B-U-K, a malicious spirit that possesses living people. Now, I've heard on the show Supernatural, I think they talked about a Dybbuk one time, and a Dybbuk box, where this spirit lives in the box. And I mean, that's actual part of Jewish mythology, a Dybbuk box, but they played it out where the thing escaped on Supernatural, and Sam and Dean had to go find it. In China and Vietnam, a Mogwai, Mogwai.
That's a real
v-
thing?
Yeah. It's a vengeful ghost or demon. Why, wasn't that a name of something in a character?
Gremlins.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Mogwai.
the animal in Gremlins.
Well, yeah, that's from Chinese folklore. In Latin America, a patasola, a female spirit from South America that appears as a beautiful woman. She attracts men and turns into a beast and then devours the man. The Silbon, a young man who killed his father after the father murdered the youth's wife. His grandfather then cursed him to roam the earth forever with his father's bones. So the youth's ghost kills people if they act like either the men who hurt him, mostly womanizers and drunks. So this is a ghost that goes out and kills people.
Well, I can say that they're definitely. I didn't know about malicious ghosts.
Yeah.
But or is that what you called them?
Vengeful.
Vengeful?
That's
But
what,
I do
yeah.
know for sure I have been physically attacked on a investigation before by a spirit. So I know that they can do more than just hang out.
Well, I think these are the extreme.
Oh yeah,
Most of
God
the
wasn't one of
ghosts,
those.
yeah, most of the ghosts you run into are benign in that sense, and we could ask Elizabeth about this, but most of them are going to be benign. They don't even realize what's going on, and the rare occasion that one is a vengeful ghost, there are still boundaries. Somehow there must be rules in place somehow, that they can't actually cross back over and kill people or be happening more often. So
I've been on maybe 100 investigations in my life, really good ones, deep ones, and only once have I ever been physically touched.
right. Yeah, and I mean, it just happens so rare.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Everybody, people from a church background would be like, "Oh, you got to be careful," this, and I'm like, well, yeah, there's evil out there, but most of the time in these ghosts that we're, going into a home, most of the time they're benign. They could be just residual. Elizabeth has talked about, I think she talked about on one of her previous shows, where she has the ghost of some Confederate soldiers that roam through her house. And a couple of them didn't even realize they were dead, she says, and she worked with them for a while, and she says, and then eventually got them moved on. But one of them, she says, just refuses to go. He just likes to stay around and help out, So, well, Dagny, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are that we don't know a lot more than we do know.
Ain't that the truth? There's a lot that we don't know.
And then there's the stuff that we don't even know we don't know.
That's true. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we're missing out on. But, the point of this show was to just kind of call attention to the fact that there could be some connection there. I mean, there's still the very real possibility that that could be the same person.
With all of the evidence presented, all the research I looked at, and I obviously didn't look at all of it because it's not possible. I would say I can't help but believe that it was one person that did all three of these murder series.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just the evidence is overwhelming that it was the same person.
Could be. I mean,
But
the
that's my
timeline.
stance.
Yeah, well, that's fine. And then everybody's got their own opinion. The timeline is what I was looking at. 1884, 1885, the Austin axe murders. Jump ahead 3 years, 1888, Jack the Ripper and his killing spree. Jump ahead, let's see, 1888, 91, 4 years, and then it comes out H.H. Holmes is committing his murders. So you got a span of 3 to 4 years in there between each one. but it was like one behind the other. You know, the accident, what did we say? Austin axe murders. The last one was on December 24th of 1885. Yep.
Yeah, the timeline is just too suspicious in itself.
Yeah. And
time for him to go somewhere else, get settled in,
get established. Yep. And that's a possibility. I mean, but like I said, the axe murderers stopped. The last one, I mean, of course, at the time, we got to remember this, they didn't know they had stopped. It's just as time went on and nothing else happened. And then the next brutal murders that start showing up on the radar are Jack the Ripper. So could it be that Melee cook? I mean, the show American Ripper actually ties Jack the Ripper to H.H. Holmes. Could they be the same person? Circumstantial evidence. But then, like you mentioned, that Smithsonian Channel show
goes a whole nother direction.
Yeah, this guy Lechmere.
This guy Lechmere, I looked him up on Ancestry.com and was shocked that I found an 1860 date of birth in the U.S. and an 1860, I believe, 64 date of birth in England for the same person with the same name.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, there are connections all over the place with these three murder sprees. And before I forget about it, we've got some new followers on Twitch. Thank you so much. Leave us a comment, and appreciate you following. There are so many connections between these murders. Are they connected? Well, you decide. Evil, malevolent, murderous intentions have been with us since Cain killed Abel. And as we've seen in some psychopaths, it has found root and flourished. Does that mean it is a demon or vengeful ghost? Well, no one can truly say. But evil does continue to exist, and it's held at bay by the forces of good. Thank you so much, watchers, for watching today. Thank you, Dagny. Appreciate your input and the research you did into all this.
Thank you, Tom, for everything you do.
Well, I enjoy it. This has been fun. Well, that sounds bad that it's fun to talk about serial killers, but it's been intriguing. Let's put it that way. And again, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're not experts, guys. We're just in here talking about stuff that intrigues us, and we appreciate it. All right, next week, next Saturday, be our third SJ Revisited show. We're going to do our first part of Phantom Phone Calls. You remember that show? And you'll be digging into that one. Got to split into two. And then the week after that, in 2 weeks, our next live show will be another Strange Authors show. But I've got to get confirmation on that to solidify that. But that's what we're looking at in 2 weeks. Guys, this has been an amazing show for my birthday. And I appreciate y'all being here. And I appreciate y'all watching. And now I'm going to go have catfish dinner with my wife to celebrate my birthday. We will see y'all down the road. See